Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode on Relentless Pursuit of Purpose, where our goal is to help everyone enter into a confirmed, confident, and eternal relationship with the source of all life and purpose. If you're not already done so, please make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you never miss a video or an interview such as we have tonight. And I am pleased to be joined by another guest this evening, Cameron
Fathauer.
Fathauer.
We should have gone over that before we got this going.
I was stuttering to mess it up, not to mess it up. Yeah, so really good conversation we've had previously to this, and I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to share this with the wider world. I think it's a great testimony and a great insight into some things we can learn about the nature of God. With that being said, Cameron, thank you for joining me. Welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you, Alex. I'm thankful Sandy Lamb connected us together. Because apparently you were the first person she really taught for a TED Talk.
Oh,
right?
really?
That's what she said.
Yeah,
she's like, the first person I ever taught was an apologist. Because I told her I did apologetics in high school and stuff, and I obviously am still interested in those things. And so she said, this is a divine moment. I got to connect you with this guy. So that's how we connected.
Awesome. I'm
grateful for it. Yeah,
as
cool.
am I.
I've never done this before. I've hyped it up for my mom and my wife. I'm just kidding. For my Facebook friends, I always joke. I'm like, yeah, no one reads my blog except my mom. But then there was a period where she didn't really read my blog. Yeah. But no, I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for doing this. I'm thankful you've been doing this for a long time. It looks like you've got a very good record of faithfulness in lots of different ministries. Your prison ministry, that was just really encouraging to hear about, and obviously your pastoral apologetics and teaching and all that stuff. It's really great to see, especially in a big city like Chicago.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Very unreached, obviously, and grateful you're doing that.
Thank you. I'm working hard. But yeah, I definitely appreciate that. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in. Kind of the foundation of our talk tonight will be a situation that you went through that you didn't want to go through, but God found a way to redeem that, as he does. And so can you just kind of start us off and at the beginning of that testimony with the car accident and everything that entailed?
Yeah, of course. So there's a lot. So I've told this story a lot of times, especially ever since I became a licensed attorney about 2 years ago. Like I've just told it a lot of times. And so I've developed like the elevator pitch, like a very short version of it. And then I've got a medium length version. And then I've got the extended edition, like Lord of the Rings expanded edition. Like you've got to sit down and get popcorn. That one's, yeah. So we don't have enough time for that one. Although we are going to be doing this for about an hour. So I think that's great. But so I would begin with the ministry call. I'd say when I was in my sophomore year of high school, I felt a serious call to ministry. It was a new youth pastor had come to town in Columbus, Indiana. That's where I'm from. And he just brought this big God theology, this idea that like God is not just something you talk about one day out of the week, but someone who needs talked about all the time, because by him we have our existence, and through him we exist. And like everything, like God is so much bigger than me. And when I was confronted with that idea and that concept, that's what really revolutionized me as a teenager. I was always a very passionate kind of person. I really enjoyed leading groups and starting projects and doing things like that. But when I realized there was a God out there that was much bigger than any project I could do, any activity I could partake in or initiate. Like it, it just it excited me. It really excited me when I understood how big God really is. And that's why my Facebook bio is Kentuckian, a lawyer, father of four, or father. I can't remember what it is now. But then it says, I'm going to look it up because that's going to annoy me. Oh wait, no, that's going to mess things up. Sorry. I might have just.
I
Sorry,
think
can
we
you hear me? That was my
yes, we
fault.
hear.
That was my fault.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Well, and so serious ministry call. I started leading Bible studies at Columbus North High School in Columbus, Indiana. That's where I'm from. I was leading Bible studies. I was still playing some varsity basketball at the high school junior year. I'm kind of forwarding ahead a little bit. And I really was passionate about the faith. So it was around junior year when I really committed my life to ministry, leading Bible studies at the high school. So I started blogging. I developed a website called dearmrchristian.com and was just using it to talk about scripture, talk about faith, and really into apologetics. I was soaking up so many different messages, sermons, John Piper, Paul Washer, Bodhi Bacham, like just these big dogs. They were just really exciting me, and soaking up tons of books and of theology and scripture, and yeah, just sharing it with my friends.
That's great.
And then I was also speaking once a month with some local pastors in the area on a radio show, which was pretty cool. And so I get into senior year of high school, and basketball had always been like my identity. You could say, like, I was a basketball player. Like Cameron Fathauer, he loves basketball. And I was good at basketball, and because I worked so hard at it. I mean, like my hands, I shake people's hands, especially my clients. I shake their hands. My hands are always cold, and really, it's not because I played basketball outside in the winter as a kid, but it's really my father's fault because poor circulation or something. And we're kind of tall, but I I played so much basketball, dribbling outside, 3 a.m. playing basketball, and neighbors would come out angry, and so it was just, yeah, it was all about basketball. And then when I got into my senior year of high school and felt really committed to ministry, I actually just gave up basketball. So it was halfway through my senior season of senior year, or senior basketball season, when I quit. I told, nothing happened. There wasn't anything bad. I just really felt convicted that I needed to give 100% attention to the Word of God, 100% attention to ministry. And then a couple months go by, and I was doing these presentations in preparation for my senior project. So yeah, Columbus North, you have to do a senior project. It's like this big project you do. Some people, a lot of it's charitable work. Like you do some sort of good thing for other people, or some big project like a food drive or something. And I chose to do an apologetics conference my senior year, right? And it was a play on Bertrand Russell's "Why I'm Not a Christian." So the conference was called "Why I'm Not a Christian: Answering Christianity's Toughest Questions." And so you think of guys like Timothy Keller and his book "The Reason for God." Like that was kind of the direction I was going with it. And so there were going to be these hard topics like, why would a loving God send people to hell? Why would a good God allow evil, pain, and suffering? Why should you read the Bible? Why would you trust the Bible? And
And then you did all
those
this as
kind
a
of,
senior?
yeah, I mean that was the conference. I was leading in preparation. So the date for that conference was October 31st, 2015. accident happened September 18th, 2015.
Wow.
So, so, but each week before that, so before September 18th, and 3 weeks before that, I started doing these Bible studies right outside the high school. My youth pastor lived literally across the street from the high school, and people could just walk over during the lunch hour, and it was really great. And so we were in his basement, and it was a really, really rough basement. It was not very nicely. It was very unfinished, and but like 20 to 30 high school kids during both lunches, my teachers let me skip class for the other lunch so I could go to both lunches and teach. And so I was teaching on those kind of topics. And the last presentation in preparation for my senior project was on September 18th, 2015. So
Wow.
during the lunch hour, my presentation I gave twice was entitled Epistemological Explanations. Epistemological explanation. So epistemology, as you know, is the study of knowledge. Episteme, knowledge, and then ology, study of. So study of knowledge. And basically, the point of the presentation was the proverbial lesson that there's truth in the world because an all-knowing and truthful God of eternity is above it. Like he exists, and so there is things to stand on. There is a way to live. And so epistemological explanation is just how you can know what you know to be true because there's a God who's always true.
Mhm.
So so I gave that presentation. It was the best turnout we had, probably 40 to 60 kids in total, like 50 or so ended up showing up for that. And then 6 hours later, I'm hit by the car while I'm
Wow.
on a skateboard. I say skateboard, technically it was a longboard. Most people don't know what a longboard is. So I say skateboard now. Longboard's, just a longer skateboard.
Mhm.
And I only say that because I used to have issues with, well, like if I say skateboard, people think I was like roughing around, like I was like this skater kid or something, like the stereotype. But I was just outside my parents' driveway, and it wasn't like a busy area. It was just a slow area. And I used to get obsessed with that stuff because I'm trying to make it sound like it wasn't my fault,
Mm.
you know. But but eventually, and it took me a while to realize this, it really doesn't matter.
Mm.
Like what matters is not whose fault it is. What matters is what are you going to do about what's happened to you? Like
Right.
because we spend so much of our energy focused on issues, bl- blaming issues on things outside of ourselves. But I think the power of the overcomer, the power of victory, and getting on the other side of the valley or the mountain is in that understanding of acceptance, where it's like, uh, and this was a summary I had for the book I'm working on. I said, um, one of the largest parts of obedience is the acceptance of providence, and
Mm.
providence is basically what happens in reality, what
Yeah.
happens around you. And one of the best ways to obey God is to just be content and thankful for what He's given you. And um, and of course, it's easy to say thank you and accept the good stuff,
Mhm.
but it's hard to bear the cross. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to do the second element of following Jesus, which is picking up the cross.
Yeah.
And we've all got a cross to bear. Like life is suffering, at least life in a fallen world. But the God above this world is victory. He's victorious over sin and death. And so that's like the heart of the gospel, that the resurrection is true. That life isn't just suffering, but life is also victory, and that God has overcome the world.
Amen.
So, but
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
no,
Yeah,
thank you for that. So let's walk through some more of the issues that come. So we're up to the car accident
yeah, yeah.
and it hits how did the car hit you exactly?
Uh, I I'm not entirely sure,
Mm.
and no one. So I was teaching there was a neighbor she was the granddaughter of my neighbor. She was like 8 years old, I think. And I was kind of showing her tricks on the longboard. And so she was right there, but she wasn't looking when it happened, which is good. But she heard the crash. So somehow I was like on the road somehow, and the car just, they told me when I met the driver, and I'll tell you how I met them later. They told me they were looking at their friend's house. And so I don't know what exactly happened, but the point is it happened, and it was loud. It was so loud that my neighbors told me, when I later on eventually asked people what happened, and they said it sounded like a gunshot. And
Wow.
so my neighbor, the granddaughter, 8-year-old, ran into her grandma's house and said, Cameron's been shot. Cameron's been shot. And so that's why when they called the police in a small town, Columbus, Indiana, it's like a big deal for there to be a shooting. So by God's grace, I got immediate attention. Like, everybody was there to help me. And I think there was a nurse walking her dog nearby. And so she was able to help me too. And so I smacked into the car. My shoulder still has scars, permanent scarring from the windshield I shattered, and pieces of my hair and skull were found on the car and all over the glass, and blood everywhere, and head. Yeah, my head, out of all the things I could have broken, the one thing I broke was my skull.
Mm.
And so my skull was shattered, and in God's grace and providence, I landed not on the pavement. I landed on the grass, which was good, but my head was bleeding. And so that's why I've got police photos that show they had like a towel right to stop the bleeding in my head while I was laying there. I was immediately comatose. And so people ask me, do I remember anything? And I say, no, which is also a grace too, because I don't have the trauma
Mm.
of of that time the way my wife does,
Mm.
the way my family, my friends, the way other people do. And um, yeah, and so speaking of that, we're missing a very important part of this. A month before the accident, I proposed to my wife, Chelsea,
Wow.
in marriage. So I was 17 years old. And I told you I was really, and this is really important. This is important to put it this way, because it wasn't that I saw someone I wanted to get married, and then I wanted to get married to, and then I got married. It's that I was captivated by the biblical view that God revealed at creation, the
Mm.
biblical view of marriage that God had revealed at creation. I was so captivated by that vision, that marriage is a good thing, and
Mm.
that God said it's a good thing. It's the only thing in creation that God made for the man. What was marriage? Like all the other things He entrusted to the man, but He made marriage for the man
Mm.
specifically, and said, and of course the last closing line of Genesis in regards to that pattern of it's good, it's good, it's good, then it's very good
Mhm.
when he made marriage. And so I was just very, I really wanted to get married, um, and so God captivated me with that theology and that understanding before I met Chelsea. and so then when I saw her and I was drawn to her, uh, and she knew, again, this was like at the peak of my faith and calling, I felt like. And so she knew I was wanting to become a pastor. I was wanting to go into ministry and all this stuff. And she was really drawn. So the foundation of our marriage wasn't us, but it was Jesus. It was the risen Savior. It was something beyond us, which is something we can hold on to at all times. The
Mhm.
whole wedding vows, to death do us part. I do, I do, I do. It's like, well, if the basis for that commitment is something that can change, if it is a thing and not the eternal being, then what real hope does your marriage have? Like, if it's grounded in something that, again, not something, but someone who doesn't change, then you can have a marriage that can fulfill the vows.
Yeah.
And so Chelsea and I were really serious about that, and she proved that before it even started. Like I was in a coma for like 2.5 weeks, and no one knew when I'd wake up. It wasn't induced. Prognosis looked terrible. Those CTs and the MRIs, like my brain was lit up with damage. And Chelsea and I were just talking about this last night. Like how on earth could that happen to you? And somehow every single neuron that was injured in Cameron's brain and is now no longer in existence. Like I lost neurons. When you have a traumatic brain injury, you lose neurons. And then you have, if you're young, it's neuroplasticity. So you learn with the neurons you still have how to make new paths, how to make things work again. And that's helpful if you're younger. And so Chelsea was like, all those, your brain was so lit up with those scans, like that all those neurons you didn't need somehow for God to keep using you.
Wow.
And
wow.
Yeah.
That's it's amazing. It's amazing you're alive first, and it's also amazing, what God can do as the ultimate healer. But let's walk through that process, because it wasn't quick. And I remember even as I was creating the show and the thumbnail for this and looking through some of your material, you said how you had to learn how to walk again and talk again and do some of these things that a lot of us obviously take for granted. What was that process like?
Yeah. I mean, and so this is where it gets. This is why I don't know if you won't really be able to see it, but those newspaper articles are from the Republic, which is the local newspaper in my hometown, and both of them play on the theme of miracle. The first one was the one they did a couple months after the accident, and it has miracle in huge lettering. And then the one they did in May of last year, so just about 6 months ago, was called Beyond a Miracle. And the reason I bring that up is because the miracle was, as far as other people are concerned, my objective improvements.
Right.
Like I put it this way: I went from a wheelchair to a walker in about a week.
Wow.
From a walker to a gait belt, which is a belt where someone holds the belt to kind of keep you stable. From a walker to a gait belt in a month, and then from a gait belt to my senior project apologetics conference in about a month and a half, 2 months. So yeah, that conference. See, I'm like going all over the place here, and I apologize.
No, it's okay.
But for those people that already know me, because I've invited my friends and stuff to this, they already understand how all this fits together. So, but you're kind of virgin ears as far as this testimony goes. And, but yeah, so October 31st, 2015, my dad walked me up the stage.
Wow.
Holding, with the gait belt, and I had a helmet on, and I sounded like Batman because my left vocal cord was paralyzed. So
Wow.
it's by the grace of God I can talk. That I was able to get that healed. And yeah, but I talked like Batman, and I had a helmet on because of this. This is a 3D model of my skull.
Wow.
It's on my desk here at the personal injury law firm. So it's pretty cool for clients to see that I've been on both sides of the table. And
wow.
And so that's why I also have those articles up there, because like people try to put people in boxes, and
Yeah.
for me it's like, well, Like I've got my skull on the table. I've got these articles. I got pictures of my kids. You can see there's all my kids. There's my wife. There's all my kids. And actually this photo behind me, this one, that's Chelsea too. I just think it's the cutest picture ever. She's like touching a horse. It's just so cute. And so I had to get it framed and, blown up like that. But yeah, so my physical recovery progressed rapidly. But I did have to, so I did the rehab 6 months. I got done 6 months ahead of schedule, but I was like starting over, like relearning my alphabet, basic arithmetic, mathematics. But those things, I caught on to those things pretty quickly. And, but it's true though, that first year after the accident, I barely remember any of it. Like, it's like I was a zombie or something. And but I do remember when I got out of the hospital, how got out of rehab and all that stuff, how I started to experience something I'd never experienced before the accident. And that was emotional darkness, depression, suicidal ideation, just serious hatred for self. And just, it wasn't even so much hatred for me. It was more just hatred for how I felt, and like how much I just wanted to stop feeling so bad.
Yeah.
That's why in one of my a monumental article blog post I wrote was called Melancholy. I wrote it about 10 months ago, and the day I wrote it was actually, by God's grace, like the last time I've had a serious struggle with suicidal desires. Like, so that was January. So not 10 months ago, it's almost a year ago. That was January 10th or January 30th, 2023. That's when I wrote that. And I began it by saying, I'm not chasing happiness. I'm not chasing a high. I'm just trying not to be sad. And there's a difference. And so it's like, yeah, so that whole depression stuff. And so I'm still answering your question, Alex, because while the outside looked good, I started walking and like moving, and I started running and playing basketball again, like all probably within 6 months after I woke up from the coma.
Wow.
But like the inside was getting really bad.
Yeah. So let's stick with that and say, so how did your brain functioning, was it hindered through this process, or did you, when you got back to kind of the walking and talking phase, were you mentally functional fully at that point, or still working on some things?
Yeah, I'd say when I got out of, I'd say it probably was by January of 2016, when the mental challenge for me, I think it kind of just, it got to a stable point where I could function. And I say that because my parents dropped off their freshly brain injured kid at college in Louisville, Kentucky, by himself in January of 2016. So I graduated high school a semester early. I was on track to do that anyway. And I always joke about this because what they did is, when I got out of the hospital and did the rehab stuff and got home, they sent a tutor to my house like twice. And she gave me a couple assignments. I worked on them for like 30 minutes. I don't remember, but it wasn't very much. And then like a month later, I got my diploma. And I don't think I joke. I don't know if I really graduated high school, but maybe all this yeah, someone could go back and void all of my degrees.
Well, you've done very well with those that you have, and um, it is encouraging to hear. It's always encouraging to hear testimonies, and especially miraculous ones. Um, let's go back to the emotional part you were talking about, because I do remember reading in one. It was a different blog post, and you were talking about you had this thought in your mind. This one day you're driving, like, I just want to drive 100 miles an hour into this building, and thank God you didn't. But that is, would you say that was a regular occurrence during those first few months, or I mean that feeling, not that you always wanted to do that?
Well, so what you're talking about was something that happened probably, I think that was a year and a half ago. So it
Mhm.
wasn't that long ago. So
Okay.
so like those when I got home out of the hospital, again, my objective outer stuff got better. I was walking, I was talking, I was solving problems, I was reading things. Reading, I was always, I still am a big reader, and so I was reading lots of books. Even after the accident, my mom has a photo of me with my helmet on, and I was reading a book
Mhm.
um, for the college class I was taking at Boyce College at the Southern Baptist Seminary in Louisville, because I was doing dual enrollment, so I was doing high school classes and those classes, which was really good
Mhm.
for my mental, um, a mental challenge. And I know I keep bouncing around, but this is kind of how my brain works. And just
Mm.
ask my wife. This is how, like, I'm just, unfortunately, I'm very, very scatterbrained. And uh, yeah, I was just talking about this with, what? Go ahead.
No worries, no worries. We're walking through it, and I think everyone's getting the gist of the testimony. So the the
And I was
was
like
there
this before the accident.
fair enough,
It's
fair
not
enough.
just because of the brain injury.
Was there a point at so 2015 and 2016 or 2017? I don't know. Was there a point where you felt like the emotional issues had kind of subsided?
No, no, and that's what I was trying to get at. Is like it, it. Okay, well, okay, maybe a little bit. It, it was bad right up until the point when I got married. Marrying
Mm.
Chelsea was the best decision I've ever made in my life. I've told lots of my clients, um, my story, and one guy, when I told him I proposed when I was 17, she was like, yeah, I think it was a lady. She was like, "Oh, why would you do something like that?" And she was like, and I actually had a leader at the law school I went to, who I won't mention her name, but she was skeptical about my decisions to get married and have children, and like saying that to my face. It was a weird thing, but I don't get that a lot, thankfully, and it doesn't really bother me if people say it either way. But I absolutely believe the greatest gift I've had is is Chelsea, is marrying her. Absolutely, we're souls knitted in heaven, and it's incredible. Like, why would she stay with me? Like, when she met me, I had braces. Like, and then I get hit by a car, and they say he could be a vegetable forever, or he could be, the mental capacity of a third grader. And people are like, we understand if you don't want to stay with him.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because my father-in-law, uh, Chelsea reminded me of this last night. My father-in-law told Chelsea, "We understand if you don't want to be with him anymore, but I want you to know Cameron's still in there.
Mm.
Cameron's still in there because, like, I was very childish when I got out of the coma. Very impulsive. Impulsivity is a huge mark of traumatic brain injury,
Mm.
and so and that's why people will do crazy things after a TBI. They'll just do things in public that people shouldn't do in public. And like thankfully God helped me through a lot of that sort of thing, but or he held me back, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I really, yeah, go ahead.
No. Finish that.
Yeah, well, I like, you want to compare my recovery to other people. Well, if you want to talk about what made a difference for Cameron, it wasn't some therapy, it wasn't some surgery, it wasn't the angle at which I was hit by the car. It wasn't anything like that. The biggest difference was the fact that I got married to Chelsea, like
Oh,
pulling me out of my parents and my family. They were great, and I had a great childhood, but pushing me towards something new and
yeah.
with someone new, with a calling way above the norm.
Yeah.
Like, one, getting married at 18 is not normal. And
Right.
then two, the calling of marriage, at least the biblical calling of marriage, is very high. We're talking about loving people, loving someone as the risen Savior loves his people. Like you're supposed to love like God. That's how I'm supposed to
Yeah.
love her. And what did that do? Instead of me just saying, well, I've got this brain injury, so whatever. And I do joke about this. Here's another one. I do
Mhm.
joke about how I said I didn't remember a whole lot after that first year, the first year following the accident. And we got married 6 months later, the day we planned to get married, which was March 26th, 2016. And so I say, and everyone in their first year of law school in the country takes the same courses. One of those courses is called contracts. In
Mhm.
contracts, there's such a thing as void contracts and voidable contracts.
Mhm.
Now, marriage is a contract; it's a legal contract, and so I had this brain injury, and technically, I joke. It's not really a joke, but it is for me, that my marriage is voidable. But
Mhm.
obviously, it's not, because the way you prove a contract is, like, proving the truth of the contract is by conduct. And obviously, I've lived as if I'm married to her by fathering 4 children with her.
Yeah.
So it's a joke. It's really only funny to me. Sometimes, uh, yeah. I don't. The weird thing about doing this, Alex, I've never done this before, as you can tell.
Mhm.
The weird thing about it is I don't know what the heck other people are thinking, like how they're reacting to any of it.
Yeah.
I love in-person things. So this is really weird for me.
Yeah, no, it is sometimes for me too. It is. I love in person, and I'm obviously, as a speaker, that's where I would prefer to be. But this is a good way to help,
Yeah, no, no, it's good.
go global. But
No, it works well. Yeah.
with getting also out of this situation, or getting kind of back to full strength and mental abilities, law school played an interesting role for you. Um, and can you just kind of describe what that process was, and what was your thinking? The thing you told me about, well, they say I can't do this, and so.
Right, right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. So great question. So before the accident, super strong call to ministry. Accident happened the day I was leading a Bible study and all that stuff. And still feeling the call to ministry, or just doing what I was already planning to doing before the accident. After I graduated high school at Columbus
Mhm.
North, I moved on campus at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky in January of 2016. 3 months later, Chelsea and I got married, March 26, 2016.
Mhm.
We moved on at the apartments at Grinstead in Louisville, Kentucky. And I was doing my school, and about 4 months into our marriage, Chelsea wanted me to get a lawyer for my injury case. So she wanted me to get a personal injury attorney to work the brain injury case that I had, getting hit by the car. And that's basically, in short, that's how we met Matthew Shad in New Albany, Indiana. And meeting Matt was so divine. I mean, my whole life has just been marked by God's goodness and His
Yeah.
favor, and His grace. And grace by definition means unmerited favor. And what that means for me is I didn't deserve it and I don't deserve it. But God does whatever he pleases. And he's done this stuff. And I I just pray and hope that I'll be faithful, um, to show that grace to other people as he's shown to me. But so we met Matt, and Matt was, I put it this way, he had a unilateral kind of interest in us. Unilateral meaning singular, like he was interested in us. Here we are, 18-year-old, 20-year-old Chelsea, freshly married. He just had a brain injury. He's in seminary. Um, and here we are sitting at his desk off Spring Street in New Albany, Indiana. And he just kept saying, "You guys are so interesting. You guys are very interesting." He said it so many times. "You guys are so interesting." And he actually took us out for dinner that day. Like I think pretty much right after our appointment, took us out for lunch or dinner. And I've never seen him do that with his clients. But he did that for us, and he eventually. So this is about a year into our marriage. Chelsea and I went on our first real honeymoon, or we call it basically our anniversary trip to the Bahamas. And in the Bahamas, I remember sitting up in the hotel bed one day, one of the days we were there, and I was like, a thought came to my head, and I compare it to the kind of thought I had when I was committed to ministry. Like I had this passion or this interest that just popped in my head to go into ministry. Now, when I was in that hotel bed in the Bahamas, I had this thought, maybe I should go to law school. And I knew if I asked Chelsea and if Chelsea approved of that idea, that basically that was the will of God for my life. I've always trusted her implicitly ever since I met her. I've just really just trusted her, and I've seen the Lord's blessings and the gifts that she has, and I recognize those right away. And she was like, "Babe, it'll be really hard, but I think that's great." And so I ordered law school admission test study guides that day and started studying for the LSAT. And the reason I studied for the LSAT, this is what you're getting at, and is because the doctor said, because of the nature of your injury, Cameron, the hardest things for you are going to be high level thinking, executive function, just using your brain. Like that's going to be the hardest thing. I heard it from so many doctors. They didn't say anything about anything else except for my thinking. Like it's going to be hard for you to think. It's going to be hard for you to use your brain. And look at me now.
Yeah.
Like, and I say that in the sense of look at what God did.
Yeah.
But that was my motivation. I studied for the LSAT, not really primarily to go to law school, but mainly to get better. Because I thought, man, if I could do this test, I could do anything else.
Yeah.
So I spent like 6 months studying for it, got a high enough score to get into. I mean, that studying was hard. And it was Chelsea who was really like, because there were times I wanted to give up, of course, and Chelsea was like, "No, you're going to do it." And that's a great example of why me getting married was such a big deal.
Right.
Because there's nothing against parents, and this is just natural. When a child or a teenager has a serious head injury, there's going to be like the natural instinct, the maternal instinct, the paternal instinct to just care for them in a way that isn't always pushing them, but not like babying them. Like if you're acting out in public, no one's going to call you out on it. Like, "Oh, he has a brain injury," of course. But like if I acted out in public, Chelsea would call me out on it. And she would, if I wasn't speaking correctly, she'd practice the word with me. Like she challenged me. And even if the parent was trying to do that, like even if the parent was like always cracking down and saying, "You need to do better," because of the nature of that relationship, it's just the way it is. There isn't as much of a motivation, I'd say, for the injured person to actually get better. But for me, it's like, well, I'm out of my parents' house, leaving Cleve, and here I am by my lonesome, I need to be a man. I need to be a husband. I need to be a leader. Like, and Chelsea believed, she believed I needed to be those things too. And so like the calling was just there de facto, like it was just there and I couldn't escape it. And so I had to rise up. Whereas if you're at home,
Amazing.
you're just, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
good. I mean, the story is already so amazing, what God's done. And I really hope that everybody listening can just, not say put themselves in your shoes, but in their own shoes, whatever you're listening or whoever's listening, whatever you're dealing with, whatever you've been through, whatever you're going through. If God can do this, he can do anything. And this is not even the most he's done. And I want to ask you, how did your relationship with Christ change during this time? So you're full steam ahead with ministry. So obviously, I mean, your relationship with Christ was tight, I would assume, before the accident. And then you come out, you do your apologetics thing, and then you're having these mental and emotional situations going on. How did your relationship with Christ grow, and how has it changed through this process?
No, great question, Alex. Relationship with the Lord, with Jesus, changed after the accident, primarily in understanding that he's more found in darkness than he is in light.
Wow.
Like that God is so much easier to see when things aren't going well. And, like the story of Jonah, like that's a great example, like the ships sinking or the storms raging and everybody becomes religious, kind of like with 9/11. Like everybody's religious when bad things are happening.
Yeah.
And they're all like, cry out to your God, cry out to your God. And so for me, I was passionate about the Lord, even when things were going well. And so and Chelsea said this to me, that like the accident was really good for you, Cameron. In a sense, it basically rounded me out because I was like 100% optimistic. They call me the eternal optimist. And the coma was dark, but life after the coma was darker. And I had never felt such a need for God's just presence than in those years after the accident. And I'm talking years. Like, again, it was January 30th, 2023 when I had my last big suicidal like episode.
Right.
And so like having that is what. And so January 30th, 2023. So that's like almost 7 years of just really rough times, especially when I was in law school. That's when I got really bad. And that's also when I had all my kids at the end of my first year of law school. My wife gave birth to one child. At the end of my second year of law school, my wife gave birth to triplets. I can't leave that out because that's like everyone goes, oh, yeah. And some people that don't go, oh, I'm like, triplets is 3, right? That's
right.
3 at one time.
God bless your ministry, because that is not for me.
But yeah, so that's how my relationship changed after the accident was how much I learned that God is found in the bad times, in the dark times, so much more than he is in the good times. And that's the epiphany. I call it like the epiphany of pain, or the biblical opposites. Like it's the paradoxical faith, the contrast where like the cross is the great illustrator of this point, where it's like what was historically seen as a form of capital punishment. Now we wear it on our necks. Now we put it on our buildings. Now we get it tatted on our arms. It's like, how on earth did that happen? That'd be like wearing an AK-47 on our necks.
Yeah.
We'd call that guy crazy. We call him like a gang member or something. Like only a God could turn such a nasty object into a beautiful thing. And he did that through a subject, and this gets into my book, he changed a nasty object into something beautiful because he did it through a beautiful subject, a
Yeah.
beautiful person, a beautiful being, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Um, the whole gospel story.
Amen. Well, I do want to get into your book and a couple of things that you've written as well. But I want to ask you one last question on this.
Yep.
As far as your work now, because now you are a lawyer, and I believe for the same firm from the guy that helped
Right.
you, right?
Exactly. I worked for the same guy who worked for my case 7 years ago.
This
We
is
could
such
have
an
answered
amazing.
all your questions if you told me to do the elevator pitch. Because see, I just started going off on things, and I hope
It's
it made
all
sense for somebody.
that's all right. We got the bonus material, so I'm happy. Um, so as far as your work now, I mean, you're this is such an amazing. So you're a brain injury lawyer, having suffered one. How does your relationship with Christ not just play in your life with you, your family, but also in your work?
Right. Well, I was kind of hinting at this in the beginning, but another good question, Alex. Like the way Jesus has infiltrated my life and my work, and is that I am who I am wherever I am.
Mm,
Like it's not a matter of like, oh, he, like, you go back to the basketball thing, like, oh, he's a great basketball player, but there's tons of good basketball players out there.
mhm,
Like celebrity culture and like, you know, Michael Jordan or LeBron James, like those guys are tremendous athletes. But like Kobe Bryant, he he died unexpectedly,
yeah,
and it shocked the world. It shocked me, and
yeah.
I didn't know him personally. I wasn't like
Me
friends
neither.
with him or anything, but it affected me.
Me
And
too.
we talked about this a little bit. It affected a lot of people. And so, uh, what really died if we didn't know him personally? Well,
Mm,
it's the object, this idea of human greatness, that it's not invincible. That
mm,
human greatness isn't the greatest thing in
wow,
existence. At least we need something more than that to stand on because it can be broken.
yeah,
But I say that because if if Kobe's gone, then can we say we'll always remember him if we didn't really know him personally? Like what are we remembering? A
right.
great basketball player, another great basketball player, another great lawyer, another great lawyer, another great whatever it is. But where's the great person? Like where's the good guy? Like the holy, the perfect, like obviously it's not me, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like the aspirations in the world are so, the bar is so low.
Yeah.
It's like, and we
Mm,
what we do is um, we're like, we prioritize, again, a low bar. It's like, man, if I can be a great lawyer, I'll be happy, and like that'll change my life. But no, you're just another great lawyer. There's tons of them.
hmm.
There's tons of them.
I like how you said that we set the bar too low. And that's a really interesting way to say it. You remind me of this is a quote I think by C.S. Lewis, and he says, um, heaven. If we really understood heaven, all the stuff we do down here would not be so
Right.
exciting. And
Right.
I'm
Right.
paraphrasing,
Yeah.
obviously, but
No, I know the
he
quote
says,
you're referring to. Yeah.
yeah, he says we're like a kid at the sea that just wants to play with
Right.
mud or something like that.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
but from a worldly perspective, or from a cultural perspective, we do look at LeBron or Steph or whoever, and we're like, okay, they got the money, they got this, they got that, like they made it. There, that's the thing. What more could they do, right? What more could they
Right.
be? And that's the world's kind of thought
Right.
about it. Which let's take this to lead into your book because it's really
Exactly. Oh,
about the subject, the
about the
person
subject, right? The
who
person,
is
right?
doing the things. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about your
Right.
book and the kind of synopsis for that.
No, no, it's great. That's really good because, like, even if I am the best lawyer in the world, even if I am, the greatest, wealthiest person in the world, like, have the most followers on this, like, if I have all those objective marvels, the problem is I'm still there. Like
Mm,
like I still have to deal with the fact that I'm the one that accomplished those things. I'm the one that has the attention. I'm the one. Because if I'm a problem, then no matter what kind of external solutions you throw at me, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to get better.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to fix the subject. You got to fix me, like
Yeah.
me. And if all I am is a warrior, if all I am is this or that, it's like, if those things are broken, if I'm hit by a car and I have a brain injury and I have to relearn things, it's like where am I always? Who can I be at all times? Like, so this is, it's a dichotomy, and it's very, very simple, but it's very profound and complicated in its own way. At least it's, I've been obsessing over this book project for several months, but it's the subject and the object. And the object are the things, and then the subject is the person, the being behind the things. And after my injury, I struggled with an identity crisis, mainly because of the depression, because I never felt that way before the accident. And so what I'm doing in this book, which is set to release, I believe, in the fall of this year, so fall of 24,
All right.
the book should be published. At least that's the plan. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to distinguish myself from an object. Like, how am I more valuable than this pen? Like, how am I more? Who's to say I am more than the brick wall behind me? Like, how am I more than an object? Where is the human subject? And use the biblical Garden of Eden situation is the great exemplar of this, because God, created the garden, gave it to the man, and told him to steward it and rule over it. And man, just don't eat from that tree. Man eats from the tree. God comes and instead of Adam and Eve going to God and saying sorry, what do? Well, because they offended God, they ran to all they had left, which was the world God had given to them. They started hiding in the bushes. So the human subject, the human person, finds himself in relationship with God. But when he sins against God, he goes away from God. He goes away from that person and goes to his objects. And hence, when people say objectification is a bad thing, it's like, well, what other option is there? Where is the subject? Where is the person? Without God, there's no basis for me saying I am more valuable than anything else. Who's to say? And so that's very philosophical and apologetical in that sense. But it has such a practical meaning, because we spend so much of our energy trying to objectify ourselves more and more, like making our bodies look better, making our stats, our resume virtues, as David Brooks calls it. He might have gotten that from someone else, but your resume virtues, the stuff you wanted to get the job for, but then your eulogy virtues. Isn't that fascinating? So that's the objective emphasis, building your resume virtues. But then when you're dead, people don't talk about those. They talk about the eulogy virtues, the subjective virtues, like how well he loved, how he listened to me, how he loved me, like how he believed in me, like these transcendental personal things. That's what comes to the fore when the person dies. So during the whole life, we're focused on the object, like, what can you do for me? But then when they're gone, they're like, man, look at what he did do for everyone else. It's just such a profound perspective, and ultimately the best example, I give the garden, but Jesus Christ, unlike any other leader in history, when he calls people to himself, the first step is not doing what he says. It's not obeying his teaching. It's nothing about him. The first step is denying yourself. Like the first step of obedience, denying yourself. And what a crazy thing, because all other human obedience has an objective metric. Like if my son, who's 3, Albert, doesn't put his dish in the sink after dinner, I can see that he didn't obey me because his dish is still sitting at the table. I can objectively say he did not obey me. And then, he'll get in trouble. But when God says, you want to obey me, the first step is denying you. It's like, who can prove that? Like, only God could prove that.
Yeah. That's
Only
true.
God can know if I'm denying myself, picking up my cross and following after him. Like the following and the believing, like that's not the first step. The first step is something only you can do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I know, man, this went by really quick.
No, it did. That's how I know it's good. I do have another question before we
Yeah, no,
close.
I'm okay if we go as long as you want. I
Okay,
mean, we
fair
did
enough.
start a little late, but
Yeah, I'm fine too. So the well, let me say this to everybody. First, go check out his website because his blog posts put all these different things into their own articles and well thought out and well laid out. And I had a chance to read like 2 or 3 before we got on after the ones you sent me last week. And that's one of the ones I want to talk to you about or ask you about is the time travel article. And, I'll let you explain it, but this idea of past, present, and future and which one really is most important or most on our minds, I guess is a better way to say it.
yeah, no, yeah, that's still probably one of my favorite things I've written. Time travel. The first sentence really hones it in. Most of the evil in the world arises out of impulse and not premeditation.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the evil in the world arises out of impulse and not premeditation. What that means is we do things in the present moment without consideration for the past, let alone the future.
Right.
And and it's like, how do we help how do we help ourselves get out of the present moment? Like we're always in it. Like
Right.
everything I'm saying right now is, well, now it's in the past, and then we can just play that game.
Right.
but but the but it's so significant to consider the issue and dilemma that I face, that how do I know what I do right now is going to make me happy tomorrow? Like how do I know what I do right now is going to make me happy a year from now? Like if I look back on the decisions I made today, am I going to, if we just honed in on this day somehow, like would I be proud of that guy?
Hmm.
Would my parents be proud of that guy? Would my peers be proud of that guy? And
Yeah.
it's like, so how do we know what to do in the present moment, especially when we're afflicted with desires that we know we should not fulfill?
Yeah. Well,
And
you had a line in that article. I know you love the first one. I love the whole thing, but there's a line I wrote down that says, all of this and a lot more because the present looks different when you believe there's a future to live for.
right,
And I've
right,
talked in different ways in different videos about, and when we don't have a proper eschatology, a lot of times our present life doesn't go right or look right as well. Because if we're
right,
under the mindset, the common mindset that this is the only life there is, you're going to live a certain way.
right,
But with a biblical eschatology, I should say, hopefully that informs how we live in the present, which I kind of think is what you were kind of getting to, is we need someone else to not tell us the future, but to provide us a guarantee of a future, I guess is a
right,
better way to say it. And then we can be better in the
right.
present.
No, you're exactly right, Alex. But I'm glad you said it that way. We need someone,
Mm,
because part of what time travel, the article, gets at is that we need divine revelation. We need eternal revelation for how to live in this temporal world. Like
mhm.
what's good, what's right, what's wrong. Like we need that revelation, and it can't be from any one of us because no one chose to exist. We're
Right.
just all caught up in this existence,
Yeah.
this unchosen existence in which we find ourselves. So if I have this unchosen existence in which I find myself, then who am I to go decide how to live that existence? Another way to put it is, who gets to decide the course of an unchosen existence? Like, like who are you to tell me what to do? And who am I to tell myself what to do? Um, and that connects to what you're saying. Again, I like that you said we need someone, because like, man, it's not about like throwing the Bible at people. It's not about throwing the church at people. It's not about like, you got to do this, you got to do that. Because those are all just objects.
Mm,
Those are just things. We need being, we need power, we need person. And
mhm.
and that's why, like, the personal God revealed in the scriptures, the God who came to us
Right.
in the form of his son Jesus Christ, living the life we should have lived and dying the death we deserve to die, receiving our just punishment, and then rising from the grave because death cannot hold him. like like that's a person, and it's not an abstract thing, because there's no like the historical evidence of Jesus and all that, which I know you're familiar with. And but the point is that it's not another thing. It's not another great basketball player. It's not another great lawyer. Like, this is a real person who exists in the universe and who has existed for all of eternity. And he's right there, as Paul says, uh, in him. He's quoting the poets. In him we live and move and have our being. Like,
Yeah.
he's right there, and just deny yourself. And so, but you're right. I love that quote. And you actually, right below that quote, is what I was saying in the beginning about how marriage, the desire for marriage, arises out of a vision for a future glory and is maintained by a past commitment. The
Mhm.
present moment has nothing to do with the making or the maintenance of marriage. Like, you
Mm,
don't keep your marriage by the present moment. You don't make your marriage by the present moment. Like, it's a you could call it a secular thing. Like, if you want a secular example, at least, um, of this time travel perspective, it's like, well, why do we get married to each other? It doesn't make sense, because we don't live committed in that way with anything else. But because, sorry, I didn't explain that very well. The present has nothing to do with the making or maintenance of marriage. Said another way, marriage comes about through a vision and is supposed to remain as such because of a past commitment.
mm,
But we're so obsessed with the present moment. It's like, well, I don't feel like I want to be married today, or I don't feel like
mhm.
I want to do this. It's like, so, uh, yeah. And I've written about this in the book, and so I don't want to really talk too much about it. Um, but yeah, how marriage, the traditional historical view of marriage, is is a supernatural thing, because you don't see it anywhere else in nature. Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree with you, and you reminded me. I don't know if we talked about this when we talked before, but I was hearing somebody say this one time. So communion is a good example of how Jesus is connecting those three intervals of time. He says, "Do
yeah.
this, that's present, in remembrance, that's past, of me until I come, that's future." And so
Oh,
in this,
that's great. Yeah,
yeah, in this holy sacrament, um, we have that connection of the past, present, future, the eternality of God, of the Godhead. And so I think that that highlights or heightens, I should say, the impact that with which we should take communion. So I think that past, present, future idea is very, very much in scripture. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And towards the end of the article, um, I say, well, I talk about the metaphysical bookends. I love this idea of, like, again, the unchosen beginning. Here's your existence, and here's mine. An unchosen beginning. I didn't choose to exist. But then we have an unchosen ending. I have no idea how this is going to play out.
Mm, yeah.
That's everybody. We're
Yep.
trapped between the two metaphysical bookends of creation, or beginning and end.
Mm,
All of human history is in that exact same position. And I theologize it by saying we're all trapped between creation and restoration.
amen.
All of human history, we're just stuck between these two things: how God set up the world and how God's going to fix the world.
Hmm,
And your life comes down to how you respond to those two things. And
mm,
the practical way you respond to those things is in the present moment, and what you're doing with what comes into your life. how you're responding to it in light of creation, how God made you, or how you're thinking about it in light of where everything's going. And so no one wrote the beginning of human life, and no one will write its end. The story of humanity is about a response to the divine beginning and the divine ending. Alas, the present moment seeks to divert our attention away from this shared metaphysical position. Instead of pulling the mind upward, the present pulls the mind downward. The present moment wraps around us like a snake to its prey. It should come as no surprise, then, that the tempter in the garden took the form of a serpent. Yeah.
Wow. This has been really good. It's been an amazing. Even though I heard some of it, most of it, and read a lot of it, it's just still amazing to hear.
Thank you. Yeah.
What God's done, and
Praise
I'm so grateful, for this connection. So, if there's any questions before we go, you guys can put those in the comments. And you said the book will be out later this year, hopefully, right?
Yeah, so sometime in the fall. That's the goal.
Do you have a title for it?
Yep. The book is, I definitely have the main title is Saving the Subject. Saving the Subject. It's actually recently I've started changing the subtitle. It was something like You and I, but that's just too, it's not really interesting. I tried to be a little more creative, and I think
you got time.
Right. I do have time, but my working subtitle is Saving the Subject, How I Found You When I Almost Lost Me.
I like that. I think you should stick with that one.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it's interesting. Because when I almost, died, I realized that I need to be more than an object. I need to be more than something that can go away. Like, am I just, another object subject to the laws of entropy and second law of thermodynamics, like decay and or am I an eternal? Do I have a soul? I guess you just put it that way. How I Found You When I Almost Lost Me.
Amen. Well, maybe when you get the book out, we'll have you back on, and we can talk about that again in more depth.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. And
I appreciate it. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you leave a comment. And until next time, peace.